I mentioned in my previous video, we are going to be spending at least this first couple weeks, or maybe a week and a half, I'm not sure how long this will take, but we're going to focus on some additional CSS topics. So here I have a document that has 3 divs, one with an ID of left and one with an ID of right, and then one that's just a bunch of filler text. And what the document looks like right now is this. So this is my ID that's left, this is my right ID and the filler text. And what I want to do is float this one to the left and this one to the right to simulate those pages that have a menu column, and then maybe over on the right side some additional menu options or some advertisements or whatever you might see on the right. So using what we already know how to do, we could do the absolute positioning. Oops. Okay, so I can do absolute position, and then I could, since this is the left one, then I would say I want left, I want to leave it at 0 pixels. And then I'm going to copy that down here to this one for the right, and I'll say right 0 pixels. And when I look at it now, it gets us pretty close to what we want. You can see this one is aligned to the left, this one's aligned to the right. We have something unusual going on here with our filler content though, and it is being cut off. That's because when you absolutely position these elements and you don't absolutely position this, it's just going to fill in as if they don't exist, so it's being cut off. Also over here, this is positioned to the right, but it's coming down, dropping down below this text, because in our HTML, you'll see we have the left div, this div, and then this one. So one fix for that is actually to put these in a different order. I can take that filler text, move it down, and what it's going to do is it's going to position the left element, position the right element, and then fill this in between. So now it looks like this. So now the right one is up at the top as we would expect it to be. But we still have the problem with this being cut off. And if I were to resize this for different size devices and start dragging this in, we can see it's actually going to start getting cut off on both sides now. So one fix for that would be to do an absolute position for this element and move it over. I know that this column is 150 pixels, so I can move this over to maybe, like, say 175. That helps me on this end, but what it does not do is help me with the right side being cut off. And since I don't know the size of the device of a user, unless I were to use JavaScript or some way of getting their screen device, I would have some issues with figuring out how wide to make this. So another option, instead of using absolute position, is something called the float. So instead of positioning these absolute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on this one, say float left. And on this one, I'm going to tell it to float right. Now, when you use floats instead of absolute, if I come back and look at this, you can see now they're doing the same thing. This one's floating left, this one's floating right, but my text in the middle is not getting cut off. And if I go back to resize this again, okay, now it just fills in wherever it can, because these are not absolutely positioned. So when you are trying to do a type of setup like this, where you want a left column, right column, this is actually the better way to do it. We would actually have the same issue. Let me go back and reorder this. If I leave it in this order, which seems to be kind of the logical order, where we have left, center, right, then we go back to that same issue where it's going left, center, but then since there's something up here, it is shifting this down below it. So we need to leave it in this, what seems like an illogical order, but actually to the browser makes more sense, where it creates this div, creates this one, and then it's going to fill this one that's not floated in either direction in between. Now, if I had content, like let's say I had a page footer that I wanted to put down below, so I'll create another div and I'll give it an ID of footer, and I'll just say this is all my copyright information, copyright 2020. Okay, so now I have another div. It's going to fill up here as well. So how do I get it down below? Well, what we can do for that is use something called a clear command. So I'm going to come up here from my footer. Oops. And I'm going to use clear. And then this is going to clear any divs that are floated. And I can choose to clear ones that are on left, ones to the right, none, or both. In this case, I wanted to clear both the left and the right. So I'm going to say clear both. And then come back and look at my page. And you can see that now it clears those, moves all the way down below, and that, is now what we would consider the footer. So that is how you can make use of floating elements instead of just using absolute positioning.